So I'm here to talk about Hudson's story, our journey from being a traditional builder to being a cutting-edge green building developer. And the point of me being here isn't to say that we're super special and smarter than everyone else, but that what we're doing is very attainable. And I think as you hear about our story, you'll be thinking of things that you've done that you maybe can share with me in the room next door that will also inspire us in our steps forward. So Hudson Companies is really a housing developer. We're based in New York City. We've been around for 33 years. I've been with the company for 13 of those years. And when I started, I was a real estate project manager, bottom of the hierarchy, and I had a lot of really great untested ideas about green building. And now I'm proud to say that I'm a principal at a company that has recently released its own internal OPR, owner project requirements, that start with us examining every project as passive house, LEED Gold, NYSERDA Tier 2. That's our starting place. And not every project will make it to those, but that's where we're starting. And that's a tremendous change. We build housing for everyone, from the formerly homeless to those in reach of luxury housing. These are some examples of our work. Now, obviously, we didn't build the pre-war buildings, but we've done a lot of renovation there. And you can also see that we've had an embarrassing number of eyebrow buildings. That's part of our past. And I think one of the things we think about a lot at Hudson are just the choices that you make and how paralyzing choices can start to seem when you're trying to make every decision as ethically and carefully as possible. And I know this personally from my home, where I've been trying to trend my family plastic-free. It's very difficult. Is anyone else on that plastic-free journey here? Yeah, I see. Okay. It's not easy, right? Right, you can clap. So I was looking, the first thing that happens is you say, okay, bamboo, wood, toothbrush, handle. Like, that's the obvious thing. And then you get to the bristles. Okay, on the left we have the nylon bristles. Seems okay. Does anyone know how long nylon takes to decompose in a landfill? Okay, 30 or 40 years. So that doesn't seem great. So then I moved on to what's on the right side, which are boar bristles. And I eat bacon, but the idea that I'm going to be brushing my teeth with pig hair was I had to really work through that. But I thought, okay, that's fine. I've made this decision. I can do this. And then I was reading online, and people were saying, well, that doesn't work because we don't know how those pig farmers are treating those pigs. So it's not an ethical choice. So then I went back to the nylon, and I learned that nylon it's highly recyclable. When you compare at least carpet, it's hard to find all the data that you really want. When you compare carpet, wool carpet and nylon carpet have a similar carbon footprint. So, the point of this is just you can spiral into these rabbit holes of searching for data and searching to make the right choices. And I know, because I went to MIT, and I can see fellow data nerds. I see you out there. You want the right data. I saw that on the trade room floor as well. But obviously, we're not here to talk about toothbrushes. They're not going to solve all of our problems. So why are we here today? What are the things that we're thinking about? So this is, a quote from a headline that came out last December. It was from the Global Carbon Project out of Stanford. And basically what the scientists told us is that climate change is happening like a speeding freight train. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will, except for maybe if it's the Pentagon, not exactly tree-hugging fools, saying that climate change poses immediate risks to our national security. That to me is pretty scary. Or perhaps it is that, I'm not going to read this whole quote to you, but basically this is from the National Climate Assessment, which is a report that's issued to Congress and the President at least every 4 years that basically says everything that's good about your life is under threat by climate change. And we don't know how bad it is, and we don't know how bad it could get, but this is a real risk. So we're motivated, right? We're ready to make changes. We think it's important to do, but we're also faced with where to start. Maybe it's toothbrushes. So one of the things I think we hear a lot about in the building industry is who's using the most energy. So here we have industry, shaking hands, doing work. We've got transport, jet planes, cars, 32, 23%. And then we've got buildings, 38%. Or if you believe the 2017 report about New York City greenhouse gases, 67% of New York City's energy is really accountable to buildings. And those of you who did the math, I did leave 6% out. Anybody? Because that category was other, and there's no good icon for other. But the important thing is that the world is changing. We have more people living in cities than ever before in the history of humankind. This suggests that in the between now and 2060, we'll need to build 2.5 trillion square feet of buildings to accommodate these human beings. And that's like adding, according to Architecture 2030, that's like adding a new New York City every month for 40 years. I like New York City. I'm an Iowa native, but I don't like it enough to think that that just seems like something we can do easily and have no impact. So if you're like me, like at this moment you're thinking like, I'm just gonna run, I'm ready to run off the grid. I spent the weekend off the grid in Maine with my in-laws. I really mean off the grid. And that maybe sounds like a good solution, like I'm gonna protect myself, I'm gonna protect my family, I'm gonna do what's right for the planet. But it's just not practical. That's just not going to work for us. So I spend a lot of time thinking about what's reasonable and what's rational. So rational are the choices that we make that are underpinned by math. They're the things that you can reason, that you can rationalize, you can think about, and then there's the reasonable, which are the things that you can really make happen given that we are surrounded by people who have different abilities and different understandings of the world and different experiences. So sort of bringing the rational and the reasonable together through incremental choices is really what we focused on at the Hudson companies. So as I said, on the left, we've got our off the grid. On the right, we have our mansion of Versailles. You might not be sure which side you feel like is the rational versus the reasonable. I think there are people who would, take a stand on either side. But the important thing is that in between, we have the green building. The point is that we're trying to grow the Venn diagram of green building, the place that's not on the extremes. So how do we get there? So at Hudson, in 2006 when I started, I was told green building is an expensive, trendy idea that you young people have. For 20 years, we've been building durable, quality buildings that breathe, and that's the way to do it. In 2016, the president of the company stood up between Mayor de Blasio, Mayor Bloomberg, and said, "We are proud to have topped off on construction of the world's largest passive house building, and this is in the long line of sustainable accomplishments that my firm has committed to doing." So how did we get there? So the first thing we did is I had a bunch of people saying we have this typical building format that we use, and then we had our green building ideas and ideals. Well, the thing that really took us over the hump was a NYSERDA grant. I cannot really overstate the importance that NYSERDA has had in helping us push ourselves forward. Basically what I said to the owners of the company at that time was, I want to hire a green buildings consultant, and they said, "A what? There's no such thing." And I said, "Yes, there is, and NYSERDA is going to pay for it." And they said, "Well, if I don't like the green buildings consultant, can I just get rid of them and we'll just keep the grant money?" And I said, "Yes, don't read the fine print, just sign right here, it'll be fine." And it resulted in this beautiful building, Third and Bond. It's a condominium building. It turns out to be NYSERDA multifamily performance program, as well as the first LEED Platinum, LEED for Homes mid-rise project in New York City. I'm sure this question will come up later. No, people didn't pay more for the green building when it came out. Maybe our absorption was a little bit better. But cut to the next sort of decision matrix, which was that we were moving from doing home ownership and condos to doing more rentals, in particular LIHTC buildings, low-income housing, where you can't just pass on the surge in energy costs to your occupants. So what can we do? What's the most powerful thing we could do to maintain our expenses? Green building. So again, this time we went into enterprise green communities. We got a grant from NYSERDA, and we also got a budget allocation from the city of New York, from the borough president, and we were able to put in solar. This was our first time doing solar. We set a record for the largest solar array on a residential building in the state of New York. It was 80 kilowatts. We've broken that record. We've set a new record. I don't know who holds the record right now, but we're very proud to have pushed ourselves again and come out to something that build on our own experience, on our own confidence. So now we've had the experience of not really paying more to test out the green building waters. We've experienced a way to manage our operational expenses. And now we have this idea, maybe we're getting greedy, that we can make money from green building. Is that possible? So for our next sort of endeavor, we looked at cogen, which I know is on its way out, and submetering. And that resulted in the Park Line, this gorgeous building where last year we had about a $1,500 profit from the combination of the cogen and the submetering. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but what really is underpinning that is we paid for every dollar of our common area energy costs through this system. So that's several $100,000 that we no longer had to bear. And so now we're getting more confident, and we're saying now we've got this team that used to be 90% skeptics, 10% zealots. Now we're 20% skeptics. And what can we do next? What's the next thing for us? We really needed a partner who was on a mission. Enter Cornell Tech. So for anyone who doesn't know, Cornell University and Technion won an RFP in New York City to build a new campus. They wanted to build a net zero campus on Roosevelt Island. We were selected to build the student dorm, which is what's in this image here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But this is the world's largest, right now, passive house building. It's also LEED Platinum, and it's part of multiple NYSERDA programs. So meanwhile, we weren't doing this in a vacuum. It's not just us. There's a regulatory framework that's encouraging us to move forward, that's underpinning our efforts, and that's encouraging us to continue to grow. So, on the left, there's a greener, greater plan put out by Bloomberg. There are a couple of local laws that happened around the time that I arrived at Hudson. First holding themselves to their own accountability with LEED Silver, then making sure more upgrades were meeting the new energy code. There was benchmarking. Moving forward in 2016, more buildings have to meet benchmarking. And then there's local law 33, where we're going to have the letter grades outside of every building, much like the restaurants. And that's 2020, which I realized the other day is next year. So that's a really soon thing we're going to be seeing. And then, of course, the law that passed last week, the New York City Buildings Emissions Law, which many people are saying is the most stringent building emissions law on the books in the world. And during this period of time, there was Superstorm Sandy, which I'm not saying was, caused by climate change, but I think had a real impact on people to sort of understand firsthand what could climate change mean to us in the built environment, and sort of made a lot of people come together over this concept of resiliency. At the bottom, I have some notes that relate to sort of how our experience related to that. We do respond to a lot of affordable housing RFPs through the city's housing agency, HPD. And, back in the 2005, 2009s, we thought a really competitive RFP submission was to say we would do LEED Silver. And now, last year, all of our submissions were passive house. So we've really grown. We've had incrementalism. We've made a lot of different decisions along the way on different projects. We've responded to the government. We've responded to having a growing body of consultants, purveyors, various building systems, subcontractors, contractors who are all able to come together to actually execute. In 2006, when I started Hudson, 0% of our buildings were a part of any green building rating system. We just did not do that. Today, 92% of them, everything we've done since then, 2007 till today, 92% are in some green building rating system. We have fluency with Passive House, NYSERDA, various programs at NYSERDA, LEED, green communities. We're looking at Fitwell. We've done active design. It's something that we just have a greater comfort with now. And, it's not just us. There are a lot of people doing this. So in 2007, I met my husband at a green building nonprofit. I know, I'm a geek. And one of my jobs volunteering for that organization was to make a spreadsheet of every green building in New York City. So I spent a lot of time online calling people, trying to figure out what qualified as a green building, what they were. I came up with 64. Last week, I was looking over some notes for this presentation, and I thought, I'll just Google New York City passive house. I came up with an article from cityrealty.com that said it was the ultimate map of passive house buildings in New York City. That's 78. And it's not that I mean to overemphasize passive house, but 78 buildings in New York City that are doing passive house, this incredibly stringent rating system or rating paradigm, versus 64 of anyone who basically said I think I'm green. That is a tremendous difference. But what is special about passive house? Well, people say it's 60 to 90% more energy efficient than a traditional building, and I have an asterisk because I see the data nerds out there. And what's a traditional building? But really, we want it to be 90%. But if it's 30%, I'm going with it because remember the speeding freight train that was out there? This is really important. This is tremendous. And as I'm sure many of you are thinking a lot about, doesn't require gas connection. In fact, I have friends who have redone their own homes as passive house, and they say, oh, I would never want to have a gas connection to my tight little building envelope. This is a very basic diagram of passive house, and the point of this is really to say that one of the beauties of it is that it's relatively simple. These are things we already know how to do. We already know how to insulate buildings, so you insulate more. We already know how to put in windows, so you put in high performance windows. The tremendous changes, the ERVs, are really not that complicated overall. Coming together as a full package takes training, it takes understanding, but it's not learning an entirely new way to build. This is what it looks like for us. These are 3 glamorous shots of Cornell Tech. It's a lovely, graceful building. This is the lobby on the first floor. So this is a student dorm with some faculty housing at the top. One of the things we were concerned about was that we would have to greatly reduce our glazing so that it would look like a cave. You can see most of our buildings are somewhere 25 to 55% glazing. This works out to about 25%. This side here is all the floor-to-ceiling windows. On the left here, we have a studio apartment. This is a lounge on one of the upper floors. This is a 2-bedroom student apartment, very comfortable, very normal feeling, incredible creature comfort on the interior. So really, what Hudson's story looks like is this series of decisions, incremental choices that we made that drew together the rational and the reasonable choices to make for a greener and better, more sustainable future. What we have to do is we just have to keep at it. We have to have events like this. We have to have dialogue. We have to discuss. We have to push ourselves on all fronts. So I wanted to thank you for having me here today to share with you Hudson's story, Hudson's approach to green building. It's really an honor. And I would be very happy to talk to you about your own experiences. And we can go from high level to data specific, I guess, in the room next door. Thank you.